Good morning, Happy Valley, and welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast. As always, I'm your host, Richie O'Leary, and join when we're talking Penn State football recruiting, my co-host, Dylan Callahan-Crawley. Dylan, a lot to talk about today, a lot to break down from that not so pretty, I guess we could just straight up say it was an ugly win, but a win's a win. Before we get into that, I do have to shout out our presenting sponsor, SeatGeek. If you don't have SeatGeek, you never use SeatGeek. It's probably number one ticketing app, I think, right now, maybe number two, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
Use the promo code Penn State Rivals, and your first order is $20 off, no matter what the ticket is, no matter what the event is, whether it be Penn State football tickets, whether it be some other game, because it's a bye week and you're bored and you want to go somewhere and watch college football. Even a concert. It doesn't matter what it is. Use SeatGeek. Use promo code Penn State Rivals, $20 off. If you already have a SeatGeek account, just make a new one. Simple as that. And you get $20 off again. So SeatGeek.com, check it out. But more importantly, back to this game. I just kind of want to get your high-level thoughts on this one because, like I said before, it was brutal.
Yeah, that's absolutely one way to put it. There's many words you could probably use to describe this game, but like you said at the top, ugly performance, but a win is a win for Penn State in week 2, and they are 2-0. When you look across the board, across the country, that's not everybody can say that. We saw Notre Dame get knocked off by Northern Illinois. Oregon struggles with albeit good Boise State team that we could possibly see at the college football playoffs this year.
Heisman frontrunner, maybe at Boise State?
Perhaps Heisman frontrunner there.
Just saying.
Alabama struggled with USF. I mean, it wasn't a banner day for the top 10 across the country. But when Penn State had to bear down the second half in this one, they did so, at least defensively. Offensively, it's still a work in progress, but defensively, they were phenomenal in that second half after that ugly first half. But it really felt like a game that was more so what you would have expected in a week 1 game rather than a week 2 game against a MAC opponent after you just beat what's expected to be a good Power 5 team in West Virginia. I thought the defense came out incredibly flat, obviously. They were, there's another way to put it than not ready to play. And that's, on the coaching staff, that's on the players. I thought Tom Allen and the defense were slow in, making their adjustments in the game. It probably shouldn't take to halftime to make those adjustments. Once they made those adjustments, it was great, but you won't be able to afford to wait until halftime in the future against Big Ten opponents if that happens. Like I said, the offense is a work in progress. There's a lot of positives. A couple things that still obviously have to be worked on. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen both looked good, going over 100 yards. Drew looked good again. He had that one interception, but I think it's a step in the right direction that he was willing to, take that chance, and he brushed off the interception quite well, it seemed. Him not taking those chances last year was a big, sticking point going into the offseason about where he is as a quarterback. But I think in terms of his development, he's still, way ahead of where he was last year. His biggest negative, I think, on Saturday was that big sack he took and not the interception. Tyler Warren looks like the best tight end in the country. I still have some questions about that wide receiver room, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, the biggest takeaway was that it will look like a week 1 performance and not a week 2 performance. I'm not sure if it was, looking forward to the bye or Penn State not taking Bowling Green maybe as seriously as they probably should have come into this game. This is a good Bowling Green team going to compete for a MAC championship. But as we both said, you look around the country, or as I said, we look around the country. Not everybody came away 2-0 this week. A lot of top 10 teams struggled against inferior opponents. It's all going to be for Penn State to get healthy in this bye week, something that, 2 weeks in the season is actually seemingly quite important right now for them. And then just, cleaning up the mistakes they made against Bowling Green. They'll survive those mistakes against Kent State in 2 weeks. That should be a blowout game. That's a terrible Kent State team. We'll get more into that, I'm sure. But the schedule, picks up quite quickly from there. We looked originally at that Illinois game as maybe an easy win for Penn State, but that's shaping up to be a pretty good Illinois team. UCLA is, they're not gonna just keel over in Beaver Stadium. So Penn State's gonna have a lot to clean up here if they want to, achieve their goals this season. But at the end of the day, I don't think Saturday's performance really changes my opinion on
Yeah,
this program long term.
we'll get more in depth in the future schedule a little bit later, but yeah, I thought the offense, like you said, looked pretty good. Drew Alar looked pretty good. Now, partially in thanks to Nick Singleton and partially in thanks to Tyler Warren, but the wide receiver room's still a giant question mark. And I know
Yeah,
Amari Evans had a nice little touchdown there, but there was also one that hit him like in the chest, basically, and he
yeah,
just dropped it. And then
yeah.
Julian Fleming missing again. Well, technically, I guess he had his first reception, but it was
Yeah,
just
he
a
had
little
2 targets,
out
one
route.
reception for 3 yards. But yeah,
Harrison Wallace went MIA. Like, is this
yeah.
wide receiver room still as scary looking as it seems right now on paper?
Uh, I don't know if I would say scary, but it's still a
Maybe not scary,
concern.
but
It,
concerning.
it
Yeah.
it's a concern, absolutely. Tyler Warren is going to be good enough for them to rely on him in the passing game, and I think he has a chance to be a Mackey Award finalist this year. He's gonna have an opportunity to go top, you know, 2 rounds of the draft in the spring as well. But
Hmm.
yeah, you can't have Harrison Wallace disappearing in bigger games this season. Amari Evans had 2 receptions on 4 targets. Should have had 2 touchdowns and about probably altogether about 100 yards in this game. The one touchdown called back on, or I think it would have been a touchdown on that
Yeah.
OPI. You can argue that it was a little bit of a soft OPI call, but
Hmm.
after last week, I'm sure that was something people were going to watch out for with him this past weekend, and well, he got caught on that one. But yeah, there's still inconsistencies. I mean, only 2 wide receivers were targeted in this game, and that not counting obviously Tyler Warren or Khalil Dinkins, and then Nick Singleton was the only other offensive player targeted. Just five guys targeted across 20 attempts. Not exactly what you want to see if you're Penn State, especially when you look across at Bowling Green, and they got 2 really good receivers slash tight end there in Harold Fannin, who phenomenal. He's gonna be a damn good pro very soon. And then I think it's what Malcolm Johnson Jr.
Malcolm Johnson. Yeah.
He was also great in that game. Yeah, I mean, the wide receiver room is still a question mark. James Franklin coming to the season talked about guys like Anthony Ivy,
I mean,
Flowers, and
Liam Clifford didn't even get a target, and they
yeah,
raved about him.
Clifford's been
Like,
very quiet these first 2 weeks after
yeah.
we heard a lot about him. So I mean, when are we going to see Clifford get involved in the passing attack? And I know there's more to the passing attack for these receivers than just getting open. There's more to their game than just getting open and getting the ball. But if Penn State is going to compete with USC and Ohio State later this season,
Hmm.
they're gonna need to be able to throw the ball at a pretty consistent rate and have multiple guys that they can trust. And right now, I think they have 2 guys, maybe 3 if you count Julian Fleming, that they can trust, and Wallace, Evans, and Fleming. But beyond that, Fleming is still a question mark. He has 3 targets, I think, in 2 games, 1 reception. They're going to have to get more guys involved. That was my big takeaway from week 1. It didn't really change in week 2. We'll see if it changes with Kent State, but still, with Kent State, you're going to have to take things with a grain of salt considering the opponent.
Yeah. I know I don't want to touch on this too much, but I know you said Tyler Warren might be the best tight end in football this year, but honestly, the kid on the other side, Harold Fannin, was
Yeah.
phenomenal.
No,
And we
yeah.
said it. We said in our pregame thing. Like, he's an NFL draft prospect. He's arguably one of the top 3 tight ends off the board, top 4 tight ends off the board this
Yeah.
year. He's up there. But offensive line, I want to say, looked solid for 4 out of the 5 starters. That's
Yeah.
the issue.
Yeah, no, I thought the offensive line for the most part did well. They did a better job at run blocking this weekend for the top
Hmm.
2 backs, which was a big takeaway. The pass protection was pretty solid. You can probably you can absolutely put that 1 sack on Drew. He needs to
Hmm.
get the ball away there. But yeah, you mentioned it, 4 of the 5 played good. But unfortunately for Penn State, the one that has not been playing well at all over these first 2 weeks is one of the guys that they thought they could rely on this year in Drew Shelton, a left tackle. He has definitely struggled over these first 2 weeks, uh, and we'll see how he continues to perform going forward and what they do at that position. I think he's still going to get the start against Kent State. I think they're going to give him a long leash here.
Yeah.
But I think he has until probably that UCLA game to maybe start, getting into the swing of things. If not, Penn State's going to have to seriously look at that position once, the USCs of the world end up on the schedule.
So I know PFF's not the end all be all, but they did give Drew. They actually credited Drew for both of those sacks. Although they did say that Drew Shelton was the worst blocker in general. Did give up 3 pass rushes, the penalty. My question is, who replaces him? Because I know you have Donkel on the other side.
Yeah.
You have Nolan Rucci, who obviously has high ceiling, or he did out of high school. I don't know if, I know he started some games for Wisconsin last year at left tackle, but is he just the answer? Is it just as simple as that? Just put him in, plug and play? If Shelton doesn't turn it around?
Yeah, I think that's certainly one to watch out for in Rucci. They got Jevin Williams there too, but I'm not sure they're ready to give him the keys to left tackle. That's an incredibly important spot for Penn State this year. So
And
I
he's
think
worked out at guard too.
yeah. So I think it would have to be Rucci if Drew Shelton doesn't, step it up here over the next couple of weeks. I think it's his pass block in this past weekend wasn't great. He was good in the pass block and in the pass protection in week 1 against West Virginia, but his run blocking so far this year has been the issue. And you look at his career as a left tackle, and that's been his issue his whole career. He's never been a great run blocker. He has steadily been a better pass blocker, but Penn State's rushing attack is one of the biggest keys to their success this season. So we'll see how he continues there. But definitely a little bit of concern there at left tackle.
Yeah. Flip side, defensive line. Zane Durant had a pretty good day. A couple quarterback hurries. But the edge rushers kind of continue to be a little bit lackluster. And they kind of everyone was raving about him because you bump Abdul Carter down. Do you still think that's the right choice there?
That's a good question. I think you look at it, and I think a lot about it going forward is going to be about the health at linebacker. That position is thin this season, to say the least, and if they lose a guy or two in that room, they may need Carter to go back to linebacker by default. He's a raw defensive end, and I think we've seen that. There's times when he flashes, but he's been slow off the ball, I thought, at times over the last 2 weeks. He obviously doesn't have much of a pass rushing moveset from a defensive end standpoint either. Definitely, I think a work in progress for Carter, and I'll be interested to see how they use him going forward. I think maybe against more run-happy teams, say in Illinois, he may be better suited to play linebacker than defensive end. Beyond that, it's going to be interesting to see how that all develops. But yeah, the edge rushers have not been great here over the first 2 weeks of the season for sure. Denai Dennis-Sutton has, let me see here. He had 2 pressures this week, had 4 pressures against West Virginia. They are getting some pressures, but you got to finish those pressures. Now, to be fair, West Virginia, Garrett Green, good mobile quarterback, can extend plays with his legs, gets the ball out quick. And then Bowling Green this past weekend was, their whole game was to get the ball out quick. They were trying to keep Connor Bazelak off the ground. They were trying to keep, his jersey clean, and they did so by getting the ball out of his hands quickly. A lot of short passes, a lot of stuff, near the line of scrimmage or just beyond the line of scrimmage. And they did it really well, which did help, counteract this Penn State pass rush, but definitely a pass rush that needs to take a step up here going forward over the next few weeks, because if you're going to win some of those bigger games down the road, you're going to need to definitely get some key sacks.
Yeah. Bye week came at a pretty good time. I guess the last thing I really want to touch on, Kevin Winston Jr., 14 snaps, only played the first quarter. Any updates there? Do we just think it's an injury? I would assume it has to be.
No updates there on Winston. Definitely seems like an injury. He was on the sideline the remainder of the game, just didn't have his helmet. So we'll see what the bye week brings for Winston. Also, worth known, backup tight end Andrew Rapplier was out for Saturday's game against Bowling Green with an injury. It was an injury, according to James Franklin, that occurred late in the week. He didn't know what the severity was at the time on Saturday, or at least he didn't say so. We do not hear from James Franklin. Well, we'll hear from James Franklin on Tuesday night following practice. He does not have a weekly press conference, so we're recording this on Tuesday, so we'll hopefully hear more about.
Yeah.
Well, I guess with Rappleyea, it's one of those things. Maybe for Penn State's sake, we hopefully don't hear about Rappleyea, because if we
That's
do,
true.
that could mean it's a longer term injury. But that'll be something to watch going forward. If he can't go, that definitely seems like it would thrust Luke Reynolds into being a green light situation after appearing in these first two games. He would become probably the number three. He would definitely become the number three guy behind Tyler Warren and Khalil Dinkins.
Yeah, which is it's interesting how he just kind of just rose to the top so quickly. I know like he was a 4-star recruit, very highly raved about, but yeah, just cool to see his little rise to fame. But that's kind of all I have for the Bowling Green thing, or for Bowling Green game. Any other thoughts before we kind of move on a little bit?
If I'm a Penn State fan, don't panic. I think about the Bowling Green game. Definitely not a good performance. Definitely not one that you wanted to see in week two. No, none that anybody I think expected. I think we all expected a blowout. But yeah, and I think ultimately, there's still some questions offensively. It creates some questions defensively. But as I was saying before, and as we'll probably get into here in a second, I don't think this week two performance really changes my opinion on this team long term this season. I think this is still a team that is better than, you know, out of their 10 remaining opponents, they're most definitely better than 8 of their opponents. I think they're better than 9, and then there's only one opponent I think that's definitely better than. So I think all the goals here are still very much achievable for Penn State. But yeah, definitely one that the Nittany Lions are going to have a lot to clean up from.
Yeah. So now, moving on a little bit, Kent State comes to town in 2 weeks. They have just let's do it. I want to do a little look ahead. We're gonna try this once a week now.
Yeah.
Kind of like towards the end of the pods, just kind of look ahead at the schedule and who they're facing and who those guys are also facing.
Sure.
Kent State has lost to Pitt, has lost to St. Francis, giving them their only FBS win in program history.
Yeah.
And they're playing Tennessee this weekend, who's ranked number 7. So they're coming into Happy Valley beaten and battered, basically.
Yeah, this is going to be an ugly game in Knoxville on Saturday. And it's going to be an ugly game, I think, on September 21st in Happy Valley. This is a terrible Kent State team. This is arguably the worst program in the country. I think if it's not Kent State, it may be Temple. This is going to be...
They're all right there.
Yeah, they all fit right in with each other. But yeah, this is not a good Kent State team at all. This has been a Kent State team that, not too long ago was a pretty respectable opponent. I mean, still one that Penn State was going to beat every week. But, okay, I'm romanticizing apparently the Sean Lewis era. But they had 2 7-win seasons under Sean Lewis. They had a good 2020 season. So yeah, 2019 through 2021, they were respectable. In his last season, they went 5-7. He leaves, and to take the Colorado job, Kenny Burns comes in, and Kenny Burns has just not worked out for Kent State at all. Which is a shame. Very good running backs coach. Was really good at Minnesota as a running backs coach. But yeah, 14 games into his Kent State career, 1-14, and he's definitely looking at a 1-16 start here within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. After that, Penn State's going to welcome Illinois to town. Illinois is receiving votes this week after defeating Kansas 23-17. That was number 19 ranked Kansas, by the way. They play Central Michigan this week. Then they go out to Nebraska. So I think Penn State's getting them at a pretty much prime time because they're just going to have to face a top 25 ranked Nebraska team, and then they're going to have to head back on the road again to Happy Valley. And I know they've had their luck of the share in some games against Penn State, or not some games, one game in recent history, but I can't see a way where Illinois is really that much of a threat. And after a Nebraska game at Nebraska, I know they'll be ready for the Penn State environment, but it's still going to be very hard.
Yeah, and I think, we will see going forward how good this Kansas team is this season.
True.
If losing Andy Koltonicky was a big loss for him. I mean, Kansas in week
Yeah.
one, I think faced, Lindenwood. So not exactly a premier opponent there. And then they lost to Illinois. I didn't think coming into the season this Illinois team was anything special. I thought they were going to struggle. I still think they're probably going to struggle in Big Ten play. But this is Illinois, and Brett Bielema will always will always be ready to play. They're always come
Yes.
in, and they're going to be ready to punch you in the mouth. And it'll be interesting to see. They've had success against Penn State in the past, obviously. So Penn State's going to have to be ready to maybe take a few punches in this game. Going back to the Bowling Green game, I think that's another thing that was surprising is how Penn State, they took that first punch on the opening drive. You're like, all right, we'll see how they respond. I was expecting them to respond pretty easy, well, but Bowling Green just kept throwing haymakers and haymakers. But Penn State kind of like almost like an Apollo Creed before he faces Rocky. Never been knocked down. Just keeps taking the punches from Rocky. Penn State's just lucky that Bowling Green didn't throw the one that ultimately did knock them down. But they'll have to be ready to go against Illinois. Not going to be an easy one by any means.
No, it's old school ground and pound football for Illinois. That's just the style Bielema loves, and he's good at it.
I will say, that they're going to face a really good Nebraska team that week before. I think that Nebraska team could win 9 games this year.
Very good.
Dylan Raiola is the real deal. I think that defense looks pretty legitimate as well. But that's
depending on home stuff though. It's annoying as hell. He looks just like him. It's freaky.
Yeah. It's getting a little cringy at this point. But that's a physical Nebraska team. So Illinois is going to be coming off a pretty physical game against Nebraska before they come to Happy Valley, which could play in Penn State's favor. Also, that Illinois game will be a night. Will I think likely be a night game.
Likely, yeah. I was gonna say I think they're all still to be determined.
Yeah, they're all to be determined, but if I had to guess, I think that's going to be a night game.
Gotcha. 3:30 start for Kent State, which is nice. But moving on a little bit, UCLA had to go out to Hawaii. Had some struggles out there against Hawaii. Won 16-13. Took a bye this past week. Indiana this week. How they got prime time for Indiana, I don't know. Is that a Friday night game? Is that why?
That is
no. It's a Saturday night on NBC.
Hey,
there's got to be something else out there, right?
Yeah, that's. I'm actually going to be interested in that one because Indiana's looked really good through his first 2 weeks, but I want to see them against a real opponent, and that UCLA team.
True.
Not a great team, but should give. This should be a good barometer of what Indiana actually is this season. Kirsten is a hell of a head coach. I think they're gonna have a chance to put together a pretty decent season this year, but should be a good barometer of who both teams here are.
Yeah, they got pretty screwed with their schedule though. So they were out in Hawaii. They had a bye. Indiana comes to them. Then they go to Baton Rouge to play LSU. Then they welcome Oregon to town to probably give them a beatdown, 2 beatdowns in a row. And then they go back out all across the coast to Happy Valley. I can't see any way where UCLA is even slightly competitive after playing LSU, Oregon, and then Penn State across the country. I just can't see a way where they're even competitive against Penn State.
No, I can see it being competitive for a little bit, but I can't see this being competitive for 4 quarters. I think outside of Hawaii, they actually have the most miles traveled this season. And it's a pretty ridiculous amount of miles. Because of the trips to Hawaii, to LSU, to Penn State, to Rutgers, and to Nebraska isn't exactly a hop, skip, or jump either.
No, but that is crazy to go to Hawaii, go that far west, then go down to LSU, then come back, then go to Penn State, then come back, then go to New Jersey, then come back, and it's just like they've really they basically said, hey, you're the new guys on the block, and you're also not notable like USC or Oregon, so here's the shitty schedule. Have fun with it.
Absolutely.
Someone has to get screwed, and that's basically it. But After that, USC will be coming to, or I'm sorry, Penn State will be traveling out to USC on October
Yeah.
12th. This USC team's gotten tested early on against LSU in week 1. After that, it was Utah State. They just beat the hell out of 48-0. Michigan this week. Michigan next week. They have a bye this week, actually. Michigan next week, which I don't think is really going to be a threat. It's at the Big House. Maybe it'll be a little bit of a threat. Then Wisconsin, then at Minnesota. So they kind of have their schedule kind of line up pretty nice before welcoming Penn State to town, and that's going to be Penn State's first full trip across the country.
Yeah, devil's advocate here. Are we sure that LSU is a good team?
That's a good point, too. I think Brian Kelly sucks, but I think they have the talent.
No, absolutely have the talent. But we did our season prediction. I had this game chalked up as a loss for Penn State just because
I think I did too.
That USC offense is dynamic. We knew that going into the season. This Penn State offense is good. I don't think this Penn State offense is good enough to get into a shootout with an opponent and necessarily win it. And if USC's defense is improved as it seems so far, getting into a shootout gets a lot harder. I mean, they have one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. We all know that. So it's no shocking that it's not surprising that it's improved. But if it's truthfully disimproved, then that becomes a really tough game, and USC becomes, I think, a playoff contender pretty quickly.
Yeah, I do think without a doubt the Big Ten gets 3 teams in, if
Yeah,
not more.
Ohio State, and then we'll see Oregon.
Oregon, and
two of Oregon, Penn State, USC.
Yeah. After that, what is it? There's a bye week again for October 19th, and then they'll actually travel out to Wisconsin to Camp Randall. They are not a good team this year. They barely beat Western Michigan. They barely beat South Dakota. They face Alabama this week. They have to go out to USC after that. Then Purdue comes to them. Then they go out to Rutgers. Then they go out to Northwestern. So, I mean, yes, Northwestern's probably worst team in the conference right now. I mean, you'll get a little bit of a warm-up before welcoming Penn State to Camp Randall. And Camp Randall's not easy, but this is just not a good Badgers team.
No, and, we'll see how they take their punches here against Alabama this week. And then USC, like you said, they do get... but, I mean, even that Rutgers game is not going to be easy. That's very much a losable game for Wisconsin, especially going to Piscataway. They have the Northwestern game beforehand, but the Wildcats can give anybody a surprise any given week. Kind of like Illinois, they'll always come ready to play. They may not win, but they'll be ready to go. This Wisconsin team is not. I don't think is good. They'll probably win 7-8 games, but not going to do it in any kind of impressive fashion. Definitely not the start to Luke Fickell era that I think Wisconsin fans necessarily imagined, but it's only year 2, so we'll see how that continues to go there.
Yeah, it's just air raid doesn't work. Let's just be honest. It's not a thing in the Big Ten. It's ground and pound football, and that's just the way of the world.
Big Ten defenses are too good for it.
Yep. I'm going to stop with this next one. It's Ohio State, of course. Easy game against Akron. Easy game against Western Michigan. Bye week this week. Easy game next week against Marshall. Michigan State, they look a little decent last week. Nick Marsh, former Penn State target, almost set the program record for a single game. I mean, it's Maryland, so whatever.
Yeah, we'll see how he continues going forward. But, looking at Penn State's wide receiver, definitely a guy that Penn State probably wishes they would have in that room right now.
Yeah. Then they face Iowa, and now here's where it gets tough for them. So they're going to go out to Oregon. They get a bye week. Then they're going to welcome Nebraska to the Horseshoe, and then they go out to Penn State. So they're not going to be fully healthy, if I had to guess, just based off 1, 2, and 3, because it's the toughest part of their schedule right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Buckeyes do in that stretch. I still think they probably end up, I think they're way better than Nebraska still. They may be way better than this Penn State team. And, I mean, I don't know about that Oregon team right now. Boise State did not look good in week 1, and then they gave Oregon all they can handle in week 2, and that's back-to-back games now for Oregon in which they have not looked convincing in any manner. They got a rivalry game against Oregon State this weekend, so we'll see how that goes. But through the first 2 weeks, the Ducks do not look like the playoff team that we thought they were.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how things shake up. I know we're looking way too far ahead at this point, but
But
that's the point of it. That's the fun
yeah,
part.
it's fun of it. Overall, I still think this Ohio State team, most likely scenario here is probably 11-1, 12-0. I think Penn State could beat them, but it's gonna take a perfect game from Penn State. Almost, it's gonna take that passing attack to really find its footing going forward, and the defense is gonna have to absolutely play better than it did this past weekend, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. So that's really it. I don't really want to go too much further just because it's just like I said, you're looking way too far ahead at that point.
It's a
Still think
two.
college football playoff is within reach.
It's a 2-game season for Penn State.
Yes, it's always what's always been
It's
essentially.
yeah, exactly. The more
Yeah.
things change, the more things stay the same. It was a
Mhm.
2-game season for Penn State in the 4-team playoff. It's a 12-team in the 12-team playoff. It's a 2-game season again. It's luckily for Penn State though, if they lose those 2 games, they can still make the playoffs this time.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts before we'll talk about our giveaway and then sign off?
Uh, no, nothing. I don't think anything really major. Penn State football wise. You know, I would say on a Penn State athletics note, it looks like women's volleyball is back on the up, number 3 in the country this week after some impressive wins, including one over Kentucky, which it's always fun in Happy Valley when Penn State women's volleyball is performing at a high level. So good to see that them back on the rise. But besides that, nothing really. I think on this for this one.
Do have to note one thing, and I'm sure you saw it. Carter Strachey had some
Yeah, that
crazy
was
comments about AJ Ferrari yesterday. That was like a paragraph and a half. He also University of No One Wants You certificate. AJ Ferrari, drunk driver, pedophile, Megan's List, can't finish school, Tinder Platinum user, great at splits. And then had a whole paragraph calling him out, basically saying he wants to put up 300K each and winner take all. I'm not going to advise the gambling thing for a college athlete because we just know people get in trouble with that. So let's just
yeah.
not do that one. But I do think it's going to be interesting because it sounds like Strachey's going to go up a little bit and wait to try to match him.
Yeah, at least Carter Strachey obviously likes to talk a lot of you know what, but he backs it
Yeah.
up. Obviously, one of the best to ever do it. So yeah, it'll
Hmm.
be add another wrinkle to this call this upcoming college wrestling season.
Yeah.
Um, I think the only other thing I like to note is yesterday on the site I took a look at 16 Nittany Lions who have left the program in the last 2 years and
Oh
how
yeah.
they've performed so far this season. Notably, Malik McLean, uh, n- no stats recorded. Dante Cephas, no stats recorded. King Mack, no stats recorded. King Mack has actually only played 22 snaps this year for Alabama, and that's a bad Alabama secondary. Uh, yeah, it makes you wonder because he would have most definitely been in line for significant playing time for Penn State this upcoming season, especially in this new defense.
Yeah. Mind you, Keandre Lambert Smith, he's still pretty good.
Yeah, still
Um,
having a good start to this season. 5 receptions, 110 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Had
but
a
they
really
lost
nice
to
catch against Cal.
Cal. They
Yeah,
lost to Cal.
and they lost to Cal. Um,
Gross.
and now there's he had those comments in the offseason about Peyton Thorne and his leadership, and then kind of without mentioning Drew, kind of said Drew wasn't a
Yeah, I remember that.
good leader or whatever. But I guess there's some controversy about Peyton Thorne and the Auburn quarterback job since Peyton Thorne through 2 games
Thanks.
has 4 interceptions.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I think we kind of knew he wasn't
kind of
all
looks like
that.
me playing CFB 25 on Heisman.
Oh,
Um,
dude. That bad?
Sometimes. I mean, I'm playing as Nevada here.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Well, you left that part out.
yeah.
So go play as Auburn, and if you're still doing that, then you got some issues there. Um, right. Anyway, we do have a giveaway too. I've had this for a while now. I wanted to do this giveaway for a while. So I
What we
got a
got?
Nick Singleton jersey with the Rose Bowl little patch on it. So pretty sick. Kind of see
That
the
is,
whole
that is
thing.
nice.
It is an XL, so I'm sorry I don't have any other sizes. I only have that one. In order to win this giveaway, you have to do two things. Actually, if you hit subscribe to our YouTube channel below, you have to do that, and I'll be checking to make sure you are subscribed. And if you are announced as the winner, probably do it next week. If you are announced as the winner next week and you're not subscribed, we'll just pick a new winner. So subscribe to the YouTube channel down below. Follow Penn State Rivals, and in this YouTube comment, I don't know, we are, I guess. Just make it simple. Just comment we are, subscribe to YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. Do all three of those things, and you're good to go. You're in the competition to win this jersey. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Simple as that. But yeah, for me and Dylan, that's another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. Signing off.